Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm John, Business Development Director for Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Josh Hill of Left Field Labs, Duncan Olney of Firebelly Media, and Chris Schwenner of the Void Network.
We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is always brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivate your audience, but also drive tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
And with us today, we have Ben Burns. Ben is a designer, author, educator, maker, and currently holds title of Father of the Year Global. He's on a mission to help creatives make a living on their own terms.
Cool, man. Thanks.
What's up, guys?
Man. Hey.
Awesome,
dude. Well, you're doing all kinds of cool stuff at the Futur, and I'm sure at your house being Father of the Year. But before we get into some of that stuff, I'd like to ask you a quick little intro question so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in the industry and what project you're most proud of so far.
Oh, man. What an incredible question. So I've been in the design industry since 2006. So coming up on 20 years now. That's crazy. And I would say the project that I'm most proud of, it's got to be a combo. We redesigned the complete identity system for a brewery called Hamilton Family Brewery. And the project was great, right? The work that we came out with was some of my favorites, and we had an incredible impact on the client's business. But we also made a documentary series about it. You can find this online. It's called Building a Brand, and that series was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but it's also one of the most rewarding because we jammed an entire year worth of work into 9, 10, 11, 7, 8 minute episodes. And so, being able to document that, I just feel incredibly grateful for, but it's also helped so many people just to see behind the scenes of a process of another branding team. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have taken part of that.
Dude, that sounds really legit. I'll definitely have to check that out, and we'll get that linked in the bottom of the description of the episode too. So basically, you guys just type in ChatGPT, like make a logo, make this work good, and it just works real great, right? Anybody can do it. You can put your secretary on it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think that anyone actually believes that, though. We always kind of have these like parts of these mindsets these days where people are like, oh, we can just AI some things. It's like, you can't use AI effectively in any craft unless you really know the craft. Otherwise, you just generate mediocre garbage.
Yeah, I've been using Midjourney a lot. It really helps to generate images for slides because previously we were using stock photos when we were teaching and stuff like that. And so it helps because you can ask it to do some crazy stuff. Like our accelerator program is all in 8-bit graphics. It's all space themed. And so having AI tools there was great. But the thing that I noticed is the more that I used it, the more stuff started to look the same. And we started to pull out of the 8-bit stuff and we started to look like, oh, this is an AI illustration. And so one of the things that I'm realizing is, sure, these tools are going to be like super powerful here, and we love our AI overlords, but it also is just starting to look the same. And I think that people that think differently, which artists and designers have for forever, I don't know. I think we're still going to be pushing the bounds of aesthetics, right? The style is still going to be something that's valued, and I don't think a machine can take that place.
I agree. Totally agree. I think there's a space where, I use stuff like the new stuff they've released into like Photoshop, right? I use it all the time. Like I do a live stream once a week on Wednesday nights, and I'm always like, oh, well, let's add a little thing here and so just see what the AI comes up with. And I generate 5-6 of them, and I'll chop them into little pieces and make them into different things, combine them and make a new thing that I probably, if I was going to make it that way, it would have taken me way more time, right? But like I still crafted this thing from these other assets, right? Like it's all like almost like photo bashing, and I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to play with. And it's interesting to see where this technology goes. And it's like
I think that like something like Midjourney, it's not something that you really can use in the commercial world, but it does have its place in, a group of friends who, nobody in that group is an artist, but, for instance, they all play Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so, you want to be able to generate the things that are in your head to be able to show your players or say, hey, look, this is what my character looks like. And that's great, but it really doesn't have any business, I think, right now being in the commercial world.
Well, I think the big prohibitive part there is just the IP rights, right? Like it has to be human authored, right? So they're still having these debates and these court cases essentially, right? That are determining how much human interaction, at what point are you prompting enough and editing enough and fine tuning enough and then photoshopping enough to it be a human authored piece, right? And like, did you train a whole model on your work and then build from there? Like, it's getting crazy, right? Like, but it's fun. It's fun. It's an exciting time to be alive, right? Like, I feel like this unlocks creativity in your brain on a level that's just. I remember when I first opened up Midjourney, Chris. Ben, you look exactly like my buddy Chris. Apologies, Ben. I'm sure when you first opened Midjourney, like the rest of us, we're just like enamored with it for hours. Like, oh my God, what if I do this? And then I can do that. And then, like, I remember when I sent it to Ross, literally like went out a rabbit hole and rendered probably thousands of images in the first week. It just like lost himself in it. So,
oh yeah. I mean, it's like having an illustrator in your pocket.
Right.
And a photographer and a 3D artist. I mean, it's just... You can create all sorts of stuff, but yeah, I a lot of people will ask us, "Hey, are you guys worried about AI?" No, it's another tool. I don't think that it's going to come through and replace everybody's jobs. That's the big panic right now. I think it's much like when Photoshop 1 launched, right? It's much like the digital revolution in tools. It's the next step. And so I think that there's a lot of panic where that doesn't need to be.
I agree. Totally agree there. And I think, the people that are going to use it best are, like I said, still the people who already are the most talented in the space, right? Like we could just do things faster and better than ever before, which I think is, it's valuable. So we'll see where it goes. Yeah. Cool. So I wanted to kind of get more into today, about the mindset of the design world and just kind of get into some of that stuff. I know, you guys create a lot of content around mindset and helping people, make money. Like you said, help creatives make a living on their own terms. Right. And I think that's a huge mindset space. And we share that here at Epic Made as well. And just the way that we've built our team and how we want everyone to the company culture here is like, work at your own time, at your own place, doing your own thing, right? And just make sure the shit's on time and on budget. And like we're all headed in the same direction with the same goals. Like there's no babysitting here. That's like one of the first things I say when I bring somebody on. Like, if you need someone to hold your hand and make your to-do list every day, this is the wrong fucking company for you. Like, it's like, but so that mindset of just like empowering creatives, that's part of why I'm on the guild. It's part of why we probably both served on AIGA for a while. That's sort of concept there. So yeah, let's chat on that. Where do you plant your flag in that space? Like,
oh man, I'm just an advocate for the creative. Like, if this were Rocky, I'm just Mickey in the corner screaming, right? I want creatives to win. I've always been drawn to the maker crowd, like the people that can take nothing and then create something from that nothing. And it's just like, I think that our community is made up of some of the most powerful people that have no idea how powerful they are. Yeah. And so through the Futur, through our content, as we educate on business specifically, because one of the biggest struggles that creative people struggle with is their relationship to business and money. And so my mission in life is just to empower creative people everywhere to go live successful lives. And that picture is different for everybody. You know, there are creatives that like, they want to have their names on skyscrapers, like they're out to conquer the world. Their ambition kind of makes up for a lot of the other mindset stuff that they've got going on. But there's also creatives, and this is probably the majority of people, that literally just want to make money doing what they love. Their craft is everything to them. It's like there's an audio that's trending on Instagram right now where you get this kind of crowd sound, and it's almost like you're in the middle of this big crowd. Everybody's talking, it's all jumbled up, and then something happens and all that sound goes away. The people who hear that, right, whose minds are quieted, and the people who find zen in the craft, those are the people that I'm like just incredibly passionate to help. Because if they could spend the entire day in that space creating amazing, wonderful things, then I would say, mission accomplished.
I love that. Yeah. I can fully relate to that. Like, I have a deep, passionate need to create things, right? Like, I made this desk. I love to paint. I love to illustrate. Freaking draw it on shoes right now. like whatever it is. Like, I like to mold the world around me. Literally on my business card, it says recovering createaholic. And what I mean by that is, like, I had to understand how to build a business. And that's when I started, like, first time I got introduced to Chris and the Futur and what you guys are doing over there. I told the whole team about it, told John about it, told Ross. Like, we were all deep in the weeds because we hadn't really heard about it, which is crazy in hindsight now, because you guys have grown so much and become like this force of, I mean, there's a lot of organizations out there that should have been the space that, like, were way ahead of you guys. It existed long before, right? So they should have been out there making that content. And you guys filled in the gap. And when I talked to Chris, years ago, before I got introduced to him through someone from AIGA, right? A mutual friend of ours. And I didn't even know what Chris was doing. Like, I had no idea. I didn't even know who he was. Never even heard of him. My buddy's just like, yeah, you got to talk to him. He's cool. He's doing this thing. You should check it out. And I was just busy with my life. I think it was like 2018, maybe 2017. Anyways, I get on a Zoom chat with him. I'm like driving down the road with Chris and on the phone through my steering wheel. And he's just like talking to me about all this different mindset stuff and about how, like, he wanted to put all this content out there to help creators, but nobody was really, like, available to, like, put this. The platform didn't really exist. We're like, hey, where do we serve all these great videos to people and all this great mindset stuff? And something he told me that I just found very impactful, that set me on this whole content creation journey, making this podcast, having, like, I make all kinds of content now, just not just about creativity, but was just like, he said, like, you can be your own platform. Like, you can have your own thing. You have tons of knowledge to share with the world, that just because you've been in this space already so long, it's like, just put it out there. Like, own your own space. You call the shots, and then you're not beholden to all these other things, and specifically to client work and all that sort of stuff, and, like, leads more to happiness. I mean, along a bunch of other stuff he said too, but that was really impactful. And I just started, like, I didn't make a lot of content at the time. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome around my creative side of what I do, because I hadn't been creating for so long, because I built up a company and I had artists working for me. So now it wasn't like I was the CEO, not an artist. So I just started making content about backyard growing. And that led me to get back to making content about art. I got comfortable behind the camera again. And now I make content about art. And then we made this podcast. We've been doing this for a year now. And it's just like, I owe that whole shift just to Chris and, like, what you guys are doing at the Futur. So, like, I just wanted to say thank you in general. So
that's amazing. I'll pass the word on. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. You guys have empowered a whole lot of stuff over here, which is beautiful. So.
Well, thanks.
A little ADD.
I love that. I love that you started with backyard growing. I love the ADD of the creative person. It's amazing, right? Like I think that there's a lot of people that feel shame around that. They feel shame of their curiosity, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't stay focused," right? Especially in this world where focus and niche and all these topics are preached everywhere. It seems like satisfying our healthy curiosity is almost like a guilty pleasure. But that's the superpower of the creative, right? It's because there's nothing new. There's nothing actually new. Our superpowers as creatives is we take different concepts and then we combine them together, right? And so if you're not feeding yourself with different things and different information, and if you're not satisfying where your curious brain is going, you're not going to pull in new concepts. And so I would be really curious to see, Carl, like how backyard growing affected what you're doing now. Like that shoe that you held up. What are you painting on that? That's something like supernatural, right? Like it's
that's the Green Man, bro. That's like 100%.
The Green Man. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I could probably pick it apart and like find all these like connective tissues that lead back to all the things that you were curious about.
100%, right? So I religiously wear toe shoes, right? If you've ever met me in person, like I only have toe shoes, right? So I got connected with Vibram, I'm doing these shoes for them. We got a bunch of cool stuff going there. I'm probably ruining the surprise a bit by putting those on the whatever. Like their audience is way different than mine. So, but yeah, I mean, I posted a progress shot on LinkedIn, and like the people that know me, like one of them was like, "This is the most Carl thing I've ever seen." And my other friend Amanda Russell commented on it. She's like, "This is like if the brief was, what if Carl was a shoe?" Like, I felt seen, it was cool. So anyways, yeah, absolutely. And so I've been doing that. And John and I talk about, so John actually produced all my like first 10 or 15 like proper episodes of our like YouTube channel. And John's super creative himself. So, but yeah, he was trying to help me come out of my shell there and start doing this. Cause I actually used to act and model back in the day when I was like 15 to 20. And then I got out of it. And then I was really surprisingly uncomfortable behind the camera again. And then so I just had John's making me laugh, shooting, and he just was kind of the one that put it all together and got me comfortable. So it was cool.
That's great. That's awesome.
I got accidentally creative. But I couldn't draw my whole life, couldn't paint. And then I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. Somebody handed me a mini and was like, "Hey, this is blank. Paint it the way that your character would look." And I don't know, I guess my brain works in 3D. So that's when I was like, I could paint anything 3D. I just can't paint it on a 2D canvas.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We homeschool our kids right now. And I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And watching them create is the purest and most wonderful thing that I have ever experienced. And what I kind of realized is that, like, I think everybody is born creative. Like, you walk into a kindergarten class anywhere and the walls are absolutely full of finger paintings and creations of these little minds. And I think somewhere along the line, we get feedback from an adult in our lives that we care about, that we're better at other things, or that the skill of creativity is not valued.
Yes.
And so then we move away from that. And so, John, I don't think you're accidentally creative. I think you probably just rediscovered it. The key is that as I'm raising my girls and as I'm just talking with other dads out there, it's like you have to give your kids the keys to unlock their creativity. That's the key. And the keys are the skills, right? And so nobody's born gifted in drawing. Nobody's born gifted in design. Nobody's born gifted in painting or woodworking or whatever you love to do. It takes practice, right? And so by giving your kids the opportunity to try these things, find the thing that they like doing, and then, enabling them to continue that practice, that's the key. And even better, if you can do it to yourself, your own inner child, nurture that creative child, right? I've discovered a love of woodworking recently, and it's a very expensive hobby. We'll just put that out there, right? So I've spent probably about just to cut this one type of joint, right? Putting two pieces of wood together. I've spent about $1,000 on the tools that are required to do this. Now, imagine like if in Illustrator, right? If we're designers, we could take a box and then put it next to a box and then join those two boxes. Well, in woodworking, you have to make sure that the boxes are square and planed correctly and even and all these things. Then you have to cut the joint so that when they come together, they don't come apart. So 3 nights ago, after months of YouTubing and consuming content and just absorbing this stuff, 2 nights ago, I cut my first dovetail.
Ooh.
And it was terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever seen.
You started though, right? Like the first
I did.
Should be terrible, right?
I did. Yep. So then last night I cut another one and it was worlds better. I'm not there yet, but being able to unlock all of the mental limitations and the limiting beliefs and the perfectionism that holds us back from creating and giving our inner child the same tools that we would give our children. That's the way of the creative, right? It's just you are a creative, and so you create, and sometimes you create absolute shit, and that's okay, right?
I'd argue that's where you should start. Everyone, like, if your first concept is like, I like this idea, I'm gonna go for it, and it's gonna suck, then like the fear's gone.
Well, that's the concept behind business. That's the creativity behind business. You learn from your mistakes. But Ben, you said something, and I want to piggyback off of it with education, because I was real passionate about education for a very long time. I worked in colleges for about 5 years, and I've been in a private school. When I was younger, I've been in a public school, and I've been in a Montessori school. And I think where education has failed the creative is that they slap the hand of the ADD. He can't take tests by himself. So what do? They put you in a room by yourself. They give you a little bit longer on the test, which is not what we need, doing ADD. And it also, ostracizes us from the rest of the kids we're growing up with. But I'll say and then they give us an hour for art education. You get 1 hour for art. You try to like vomit all of your creativeness onto a canvas or onto whatever project they told you we're working on. Maybe you don't like working with clay, but that's what we're doing this week. The one thing that I absolutely loved about being in a Montessori school was that they took creativity and then applied that to your style of learning. So, we're learning numbers today. How do you want to learn it? Well, I want a paintbrush and I want a canvas and I want to make a painting about counting from 1 to 10. Or the person who's more of an engineer, I want to build this little device where I can count and then wrap the paper around like a toilet paper roll, so I create this scroll essentially of numbers. And, that was probably the most amazing time of my life, was going to that Montessori school, because they applied so many different things to your learning, abilities. So I didn't even know that I had ADD until, I don't know, I was 10.
Wow.
But yeah, I know until I was an adult.
Sure. But it's funny too, because I've done some research and I went back on it. Do you know 80% of the CEOs that we have in the United States graduated from a Montessori school?
That's incredible.
Yeah. And Steve Jobs didn't, but he sent every one of his kids to Montessori school.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
John, it was fun watching. So over COVID, when we decided to start like really making content. John had been like messing around with his camera, and he bought a little camera and having fun. But John definitely has imposter syndrome about his creative abilities. And he just started doing these really cool shots of like all these like liquor bottles and like little like everyday carry things and like, I don't know, all kinds of just little knickknacks, but and just like lighting them cool. And like, I just saw him like really unlocking his creativity, and I was super proud of him. I kept like encouraging that, because John helps you with business development, right? So like, not necessarily the most creative aspect of this business, but I love that he's got a creative soul and he's a storyteller and he understands like creativity and all the like crazy nerdy stuff we're into, like, Dungeons and Dragons and video games and all the stuff, right? And then so I kind of twisted his arm a bit and got him to help me start shooting video for, like I said, my little first bits of content, and he was really getting into it, like really doing some creative things there that I'd love to see him pick back up. He's been busy with other things, but yeah, watching someone unlock their creativity, like you said, even a grown man who's been your friend for 10 years, like, was just a fun journey, and then being a part of that. So
yeah, I figured out, I watched a YouTube video one day. This is what got me into videography, but I watched a YouTube video one day of a guy who cloned himself, and he was talking to himself. And I was like, I wonder how hard that is to do. And in 10 minutes, I figured out how to do it. And I sent my dad on Facebook a video for Father's Day of me, like, bitching at myself about not getting him a Father's Day gift. And, like, it was so therapeutic. So I made kind of like a TikTok channel out of it, and then applied it to, like, my passion, Dungeons and Dragons. And, I grew that TikTok to 20,000 followers. And
nice.
then but it was cool because what it did was it gave me the ability to meet like-minded individuals over TikTok. And then we started a Twitch stream and we became real popular. We went to, Indianapolis, and then got to play our Dungeons and Dragons game on the main stage at Gen Con. So it was a lot of fun.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But tying that into what you said earlier, like, I watched John go from, like, meh about life in general, like, on some levels, right, to, like, really igniting some real happiness and excitement inside of him that was fueled by this creativity. And to your point, I think all people are creative, and when that gets zapped out of our lives for whatever reason, be it like art has no value, or never make better things for you to do, or you're not good at this, right? Like, there's no one's born good at anything, right? Like, we might have predispositions based on whatever things we've encountered, or some genetic variations to be quicker to learn a thing. But, like, if you want to be an amazing illustrator, just go try and do shitty work and keep trying and keep building on top of that and keep finding better resources, go to different things. It's the same thing with, like, the future. Like, if you want to learn how to run a creative business and be a good freelancer, or even just watch these videos, learn these mindsets, apply these things to conversations, like, that's how it works. Like, you just fail. Like, my favorite quote in this space is, like, the biggest difference between the master and the apprentice, or the novice, the person who's just starting, is that the master's failed more times than the apprentice has even tried, right? Like, so, like, that's the secret. Just get up and go for it, and learn and pay attention, and keep slamming yourself into this wall and figuring out ways around the obstacles and to get better,
Yeah, I love looking at Picasso for this, especially when people are going through, like, creative block and all that kind of stuff. Picasso has a handful of paintings that would be considered masterpieces, right? Masterworks, where they're displayed in galleries. They're pointed to as leading examples of the style that he painted in. He also painted something crazy, like almost 100,000 paintings in his life. And out of that, there's a handful of masterpieces. Yeah. And yet we all know his name. And I think that one of the biggest unlocks, and it's something that I struggle with too, is removing the performance aspect out of creativity. And if we can remove the performance aspect from our creative act, and if the creative act just becomes something that we do on a daily basis, instead of something that we have to do well on a daily basis, that right there is power. That is unlocking something in yourself that, like, hey, if you do something that's crappy, it doesn't even matter because it's one of 100,000.
Yeah.
Right. I can tell you, I go through so much inner turmoil and pain when I'm publishing things on the internet, which is why, like, content has always kind of eluded me, right? Anything that I create for the internet, it goes through the ringer, right? I'm really focused on making it the best it can be, which is admirable. It's fine. But the thing is that emotional pain, that inner turmoil that I go through when it's time to publish something on Instagram, or take a YouTube video and hit publish, or I I mean, even a class, right? There's pain associated with that. And I look back on my career and all the things that I've made and all the pain that I've been through because of the creative process. And it's like, man, I don't even remember that stuff. I can't even remember. I know it hurt, but I don't remember what it was. Like I stumble across myself on the internet and I'm like, I don't even remember shooting that video, but I can guarantee you that I obsessed over it.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same stuff as like, old projects in the design portfolio, old pieces of furniture that I've made. I mean, it's like I come across that and I'm like, I don't remember that, or I don't. Like, oh, that's cool. You don't remember the turmoil that you experience. And I think that if we can just keep that front of mind, if we can keep that fact where it's like, man, I just create. That's what I do. I make stuff.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. That's the magic of my father. So he was a huge inspiration to me creatively. Like he painted all these paintings on my ceiling, and like I have like hundreds of his stuff, and he passed away in 2016. And I ended up spinning up this, like I made a bunch of NFTs with his work and created like an NFT art benoir. But like in that, I started my live stream that I mentioned earlier, where I just make art every week because that, like, I was really stressed and like so lost in the weeds of building the business that I stopped being creative. And I was like, why am I not feeling happy? Like I should be happy, right? And I was like, oh, I'm not making cool shit anymore. Well, long story short, like I get into this thing and I start doing this stream and I start committing to making art every week. And the number one thing I try to channel was my dad's like unbridled, wild creativity. When my dad sat down to do a painting, he's fucking slinging paint on the walls and everything, and like literally no fear. Like he can't fuck it up. It's like, you can't fuck it up. You just keep going. Like it's like, it doesn't look right. You just keep reworking it. Like he just really infused that thought into me of like, you just flow with the process. Like there's no fear. You can't do it wrong. You're making art. It's human expression. Like there's no wrong way to do that. Like you might not like this one as much as the one you did yesterday, the day before, but just like embrace the process. And I try to channel that now when I do my personal stuff. Because I got really anxiety ridden trying to do these things live on YouTube in front of like, 10, 20, 30 people. Like, and it's just like, it doesn't even matter. We're just having fun, right? So just kind of like making light of the fear, I think is huge, right? Just create something cool. And like, it might not be this one, it might be the next one, but like you're on that journey of making things for that fulfillment's sake. And you'll love some of it and you'll hate some of it and some of it will be meh. But like, it's the numbers game, like Picasso, right? You just have this huge breadth of thing. You find your artistry in there. A lot of people don't know Picasso could paint hyper realistic Renaissance style art. That just wasn't his, like that had been done, right? So he develops his own style through this whole process, but he had to know that level of amazing realism and dimensionality and form to be able to break it in a way that was so revolutionary that no one had ever seen anything. He created an entire art style. Like that's amazing. So I think, just embracing the fear as part of the journey of life of that's what growth looks like. And you don't know where you're going. I think that's a huge part of the right mindset for creativity.
Well, and I think that the fear is rooted in that performance where it's like, if I don't like this, or if people don't like this, or if it doesn't get this many likes, or if the client doesn't like it yet, I think that's just for many creatives, it's tied so tightly together. When in reality, it's like I'm going to make this thing in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'm going to make another thing, and I'm not going to stop making. Regardless of whatever happens with this one piece, the constant is I'm still going to be making stuff. And I think if we can make that a part of our identity and try to split that performance out of it, we will see so much better work from the creative that's able to just create without the perfectionism, without the performance.
Reese.
Now, it reminds me of the story about Jackson Pollock. This is my favorite art story of all time. Jackson Pollock had an exhibit where, he was showing off his most recent pieces, and there's probably like 10 of them in a circle. And there were these art critics that were there, and a couple of them stopped in front of this piece that was like all black splotches and a little bit of white splotches, but there was this one tiny little red splotch down near the like right middle of the canvas. And they're going back and forth, and they're saying, it's so beautiful. This is the representation of light versus dark, choking out your life, and the little red dot represents us, and how light and dark are constantly fighting towards getting to us. And the manager of the exhibit says, well, why don't you ask Mr. Pollock? And he happened to be standing behind them. He was looking at a painting that was splotched red and yellow and everything. And they said, well, Mr. Pollock, this is our idea. And they explained it to him. And he like looks real close at the painting and then kind of like scratches the red and goes, oh, that's where that little guy went. It was a complete accident from him flinging the paintbrush backwards. And it just goes to show you that you don't have to be intentional with your art to make really good art. Everyone's going to see something completely different when they look at it.
Yeah. I mean, after you create it, right, it is then in the world for other people to interpret. And no matter what you intend, they're going to see it through their lids and their experience, and ascribe whatever meaning they want to it. And the idea in my dichotomy in my head of design versus art, design really is trying to do something, like it's really trying, like its best, just it's still abiding by the same rules of like people are going to see whatever the hell they want to see, right? You could see that in the latest Mac commercial, like, yeah, we're going to jam all this great art into this iPad, like, and it's like, yeah, you just destroyed all the arts, like that commercial sucks, like it's like, but you better believe there was 50 people behind that talking about what a great idea was, all the way up until the entire world was like, this is horrifying, like and it is what it is. But I think design, like, is you're trying to manipulate that intention as much as possible, like trying to have an objective, trying to make someone experience a thing, where art is just, for me, like less about that and more just about that pure creative expression. And they can live and overlap, and there's tons of gray area, but that's how I sort it out of my head. I don't know, maybe some other people have different theories on that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that like we could go to the grave talking about the difference between design and art.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between cooking and baking.
Yeah.
Fair. No, there's some overlap for sure that can kind of get into the weeds in either direction there for sure.
Hey, Ben, I do have a question that I know Carl and I have been pretty passionate about. We even shot a video on it in his backyard. What do you think, when you think of valuing yourself and your work, like what's the mindset behind that?
Well, I think I need a little bit more context. And like in what way? Are we talking about external value, or are we talking about like pricing for clients?
A bit of both. So like when you see somebody on Instagram and they have some of the best art, that you've seen in a while, or they have a really unique style, and they say, taking commissions, and you see, this person that's doing like a 12 by 12 image of whatever you want, full color, full shading, and it's $50. And you just kind of like in my head, like, and I've had a lot of conversations about this with like new freelancers in the Dungeons and Dragons world, where they like draw people's characters and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, how long does it take you to do that? And they're like, oh, it'll probably take me, 24 hours from start to finish. And I go, are you just a little bit scared to charge why are you valuing yourself that low? And there's this like weird mindset behind like the imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like, oh, well, I'm just doing what I love, so why would I charge someone, more than what I'm comfortable with charging? Like, I don't remember what video I saw where somebody was like, you have to make yourself uncomfortable with the number. As soon as you're uncomfortable, that's the number you should go with. Because it also ruins the expectation too. Like, Carl had a video, it was like, don't be an asshole. When it comes to valuing yourself, don't be an asshole. Because we had a client who was like, we were doing a bunch of cool stuff for them. We were making videos and making logos. And by the end of the project, he was like, hey, can you just introduce me to some college kid that'll do this for like $120? And we immediately made the video of don't be an asshole, because the idea behind it is, okay, you have this amazing art and this amazing talent that's taking you forever to create, but you're creating an expectation for the general public who doesn't really know how much work goes into that our industry deserves to be underpaid.
I'm going to take a contrarian take here.
Okay.
I don't believe that there is a market value for creativity. And I think that perception where we've got professional artists, professional creatives, professional designers who are charging, professional rates, who are worried about people dragging down the market of creativity. I would argue that since creativity has been offered in commercial for sale, there's always been people at a low budget. There's always been people charging next to nothing. Look at the story of Nike. How much did Nike pay for the logo? Like $30, right? It was and a pair of shoes. There has been just this issue of low pricing, in quotations, has plagued our industry for a long time. Now, granted, I'm always going to be an advocate for people to charge more, because I think if you can charge more for your work, you can live off of the profit for longer, right? And depending on what you value, depending on how you want to interact and what kind of relationship that you want to have with money, that can be a good thing. Or you can give it away, right? Or you can use it to do good things for other people. And so I always want creatives to charge more. That's a core mission for me. But I don't think that there is a market value for creativity, because there's two value systems at play. There's our own value system where we value our work, and then there's the client's value system. And the thing that we have to do is look for a match. The guy that asked you to find a college kid to do it for $120, his value system would have never allowed him to work with somebody like me, who has a very high value system, value mindset when it comes to creativity. And so instead of thinking it like, oh man, we're training a market to, react to low prices and expect low prices, I think that we just need to look for a match, a better match with people who value what we do at the appropriate level. Now, what does this do? Thinking like this, like sales is a matchmaking, pricing is both internal and external factors. It's a relationship between a buyer and a seller. That takes the pressure out of sales. Now all of a sudden, you're not having to convince somebody to pay more, because you're never going to do that. You can't squeeze blood out of a stone. You can't magically make more money appear in somebody's wallet to give you.
Right.
Right? And so if somebody doesn't value what you do at the same level as what you want to price, then it's just not a good match. And now we've removed the pressure from the sales cycle. We've removed all of that gnarly, like, how am I going to convince? Like, am I going to come off as a used car salesman? No, you're just looking for a match. Yeah. And there's going to be people that are not good fits.
Yeah.
And so I think like the other side of that personal valuation, like I said at the beginning, people have all sorts of different goals. Some people, all they want is beer money. And if they can get their beer money from slinging prints online or doing custom pieces of artwork online, and they're happy, man, gold star, cool. You have my seal of approval, because it has absolutely no relationship. It has absolutely no impact on the way I value my work and the kind of people that I want to look for to work with. And so a lot of that, I think that we should, as people who, have public opinions about these things, I think that we should remove a lot of the shame around pricing. If we can disassociate all of these negative emotions away from money, it's going to make it a lot easier for creatives to simply strive for the life that they want to live. And I think that part of it is to just unlock possibility, right? because somebody may have a broken value system internally that they don't think that they should be charging. Instead of, yeah, I value it, but I'm just looking for low pressure sales and don't want to deal with big client projects and all that kind of stuff. If they have a broken value system internally, then that needs to be healed. And I think part of that is saying, yeah, we did $100,000 strategy day. One day, $100,000. Right? It's almost the what is it? Roger Bannister? Is it Roger Bannister? The 3-minute or 4-minute mile guy, like the first person ever in history to break the 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden, after he did it, there was a whole bunch of other people that did it. It's like once you know something is possible, then you can strive for it. And I think that we, as people with platforms, if we talk about pricing, if we share, like, yeah, we've been able to charge $250,000 for a single logo. We've been able to do these things. Then all of a sudden, somebody's like, I've always thought that my identity design service could be worth $5,000 to somebody. Once we unlock that possibility, then their value system can change, and then we can go from there. But what I don't want to do is, hey, kid, you're ruining it for the rest of us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. When you put it like that, one of my big things is just trying to break some of my artist friends out of their shell and really make them think, what are you doing this to make a living? Are you doing, do you want to quit your 9 to 5 and do this, forever because it makes you happy? Or are you just doing it as like a passion project? I'll take a couple of these a month and it makes me happy just to, to sit there and make somebody else happy with my work. So you're right. There's definitely a fine line between the purpose of what you're doing. Like, why are you doing this? But the internal value system that a person has, I think sometimes is just required. Like, somebody has to come in and help that person understand that they are valuable.
Yeah.
What they do is good, and maybe they've been beaten down their whole life. Their parents think that they're being an artist is a waste of time. Stick with being a pharmacy technician, which is the opposite, and you're letting you just need that guy to come up behind you and be like, no, you got this. You can do this.
I will say that there is something to people having shitty jobs and making great art.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something there where, especially if you're at the beginning of your career and you're like, man, I want to make stuff. The time that you have slinging sandwiches or cleaning floors, and I speak from experience, right? I was in the Army. I served in the National Guard. And man, some of my most creative thinking, some of my most incredible sketching was done during hours of safety briefs where they were going over seatbelt usage. Right? So it was just so bored. But the only thing that I could do is think about what I wanted to create or take notes, aka sketch. So I think that there is something about having boring jobs that, like, it does spark creativity, and it does it without the pressure of commercial success that some people have to be in, right? It's like, as soon as you add that stress of hey, you got to make money, kid, or you're going to fail, that can, if it comes too early, it can put the wrong kind of stress onto a creative. And so that's why I think that it's nuanced, it's so nuanced, and it depends on the person. And it depends on their goals too. So that's why I'm like, man, let's take a look at the individual human.
Yeah.
And tailor our advice to them.
I love that initial introspection, the concept there, because that is really powerful. Because there are some people that never want the stress of making money with their art, but they still need the art to be happy, right? So they still need that, that's their space of human expression and feeling good and making cool things. I know a lot of people like that, actually. I see that a lot in doctors and really high performing careers where they make, six figures, multi six figures, and like they're never gonna jump out and do this creative stuff, but they make amazing artwork that they could sell, but they love the idea that like they have their profession and this is something they do for themselves. And I think that's equally noble as well, right? Like whatever you do to be happy, I like that. That's definitely good. So
yeah, it's like you don't normally see the person in recess, you don't see the person in recess in school, making art. You see them hanging out and having fun with their friends versus that's the person in the science class who couldn't give a crap about what's going on and is miserable as doing the sketching and thinking or, writing a story. But
then somebody jumps in the business and then the game changes, right? Yep. Like if they're actually like, okay, now I need to make money from my creativity. Now I need to like sell my services and I need to profit. So many people just have a gap of knowledge there, right? Yeah. And they're unaware how to calculate the profit from their projects. They're unaware how much they should be charging. There's just a lot of knowledge that gets lost. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time. And charging enough, it can be a different objective number for a lot of different people, right? Somebody might have 80% profit on a $2,000 logo, and another business with different amounts of overhead, different amounts of time commitments, they got to charge $20,000 just to make that 30%. Yeah. And so it's different for everybody. And so the number that I see thrown around a lot is that $10,000 number. If you can make $10,000 from a single project, you've made it. Well, maybe, but what if you live like right in the middle of the U.S., like smack dab in the country, and you have no mortgage, and like it's different. It's money is different depending on all the circumstances, and so you have to know how to calculate your own runway, your own burn rate, your own profitability, and that's where we can bring some objectivity into pricing. It's like it's still personalized, and it's still personalized to what you want to accomplish with your creative career, but there are things like profit that we have to pay attention to.
Sure. So we're coming up on time, but before we wrap, we have one last question for you. Yeah. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, a valuable resource, or a favorite client?
Man, I owe a lot to Christo. He's the founder of the Futur. We've talked about him a couple times during this episode. And so, first and foremost, I just want to thank that dude. He's my boss. He's a dear friend, and he's just an amazing human being. So we'll shout Chris out. What I'm watching though these days, it's Matthew Encina, who's another close personal buddy of mine. He's got an entire YouTube channel about it's almost like interior design, videography, product creation. It's just he's a maker in his own habitat now, and it's just incredible to watch. And then on a totally different aesthetic side, Adam Savage. I'm just binging his YouTube channel, man. It's just incredible what he does with a cell phone, and then his incredible shop. So that's what I'm watching. If anybody cares, check those two out.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, I also want to give a big thank you to Dave Waite, who Zookeeper, who connected us with Ben. Really appreciate him. Super good guy. So it's funny how like we get up these circles and we all just sort of like are only 1 or 2 degrees of separation from everybody else in the space, So it's pretty cool. So,
Yep. So we've been talking to Ben Burns, who's the COO at the Futur. You can check out their website below. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
I'm Mr. Ben Burns everywhere.
Mr. Ben Burns everywhere. Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Ben, thanks so much for being on our show. And until next time, friends, we'll see you soon. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.